We just seen countless attacks on Caitlin Clark, and I'm not even finna go through the jacket of playing the videos. We all know what happened at CC. Now, what is crazy about all of this is that the Wall Street Journal wrote an article earlier this week kind of explaining Caitlin Clark's civil rights being broken.
Let's talk about Caitlin Clark and the idea of a government probe or an investigation into hostile work environments being conducted by the government because of the actions that the league itself and some of the players have had.
It began not with a foul on the court, but with a verdict in a courtroom. In 2024, Darica Hamby stunned the sports world by securing a $2.2 million settlement against the Las Vegas Aces and, by extension, the WNBA. Her claim was pregnancy discrimination, a hostile work environment, and retaliation. It wasn't just a win, it was a legal earthquake. Hamby proved that the league, long seen as untouchable in matters of internal conduct, could be dragged into federal court and forced to pay. That precedent now hangs like a loaded weapon on the wall, ready to be fired again. The Hamby case didn't just end with money changing hands. It opened a door that cannot be closed. Lawyers saw it, players saw it, and perhaps most importantly, Caitlin Clark's team saw it. Hamby had documented a pattern of mistreatment, league inaction, and discriminatory behavior. In doing so, she created a legal blueprint that was clear, repeatable, and devastating. For the WNBA's legal team, that blueprint is now the stuff of nightmares because the parallels between Hamby's ordeal and Clark's reality are impossible to ignore. This isn't speculation, it's a ticking clock. Caitlin Clark's story begins on the hardwood, but it may very well end in a courtroom. Since her first game, the hits have come hard, often, and with disturbing frequency. Like Hamby, she exists in a league that, according to her supporters, has done little to protect her from targeted abuse. Hamby's settlement proved that the league's duty of care is enforceable under federal law. If Clark walks the same legal path, the stakes are higher, the evidence sharper, and the potential damage to the WNBA far more catastrophic. This is dossier vu with sharper teeth. The similarities are chilling. Hamby faced discrimination for a life event pregnancy that is legally protected. Clark's potential case hinges on harassment and targeting in her workplace. The basketball court, based on identity, retaliation, and neglect. Both involve league silence, both involve repeated incidents, and both hinge on whether the WNBA fulfilled its legal duty to safeguard players. In Hamby's case, they didn't. In Clark's case, the evidence suggests they aren't. And if history is any indicator, the courtroom outcome could follow the same devastating trajectory. The league should be terrified, but so far, it's eerily quiet. This silence is not benign. It's dangerous. Hamby's case was a warning shot. It told every player that the WNBA's failure to act could be punished in court. Now Clark stands in a position where that precedent could be weaponized against the league once more. If her team decides to follow Hamby's roadmap, every ignored foul, every unpunished hit, and every shrug from the commissioner's office becomes another brick in a legal fortress. The WNBA might believe it's weathering a PR storm. In reality, it could be preparing to walk into a legal hurricane. But what separates this from any other sports controversy is the sheer mathematical undeniability of the evidence. The numbers don't lie, they scream. In the 2024 season alone, Clark absorbed 17.1% of all flagrant fouls in the WNBA. That's nearly 1 in every 6, aimed at a single player in a league of hundreds. Statisticians have calculated the odds of this being random as virtually zero. This isn't bad luck. This is a statistical fingerprint, and it points towards something far darker than aggressive defense. It points towards systemic targeting. Numbers, in this case, are more damning than words. The Chicago Sky roll adds even more fuel to the fire. Their players alone committed nearly 12% of all flagrant fouls against Clark, an astronomical concentration from one roster. If you were to present this in a courtroom, it wouldn't look like coincidence. It would look like a pattern. And in discrimination law, patterns are the lifeblood of successful cases. They're what transform a series of ugly moments into actionable evidence. Every shove, every blindside hit, every unpunished act on the stat sheet is another piece of ammunition. Clark's legal team could fire. The league's own record-keeping betrays it. For anyone still tempted to chalk this up to hard basketball, there's another layer, one that takes this from suspicious to chilling. Sophie Cunningham, Clark's current teammate, has gone on record describing locker room conversations during her time with the Phoenix Mercury. These weren't vague discussions about playing tough. According to Cunningham, they involved specific, deliberate talk about how physically to challenge Clark, how to push the line without crossing it, and how to make sure the hits hurt but stay just inside the rules. That kind of premeditation shifts this from aggressive play to something more insidious. It makes the WNBA's silence even harder to defend, because when players are not only being targeted but strategizing how to harm one of the league's most prominent stars, and the league takes no meaningful action, it's no longer just a basketball issue. It becomes a legal one. And legal issues, as Hamby showed, don't just disappear, they grow teeth, they dig in, and they leave scars on players, on reputations, and on the league itself. Make her burn every inch of space. In the context of workplace harassment law, that's damning. Coordinated physical targeting isn't a sports strategy, it's hostility, documented and spoken aloud by someone who was there. This testimony is dynamite in legal terms. Lawyers call it first-hand corroboration, and it's the difference between circumstantial suspicion and provable fact. Cunningham's revelations could serve as the locker room equivalent of an internal memo admitting to discrimination. Add that to the statistical record, and the story begins to look less like aggressive competition and more like orchestrated targeting. It becomes harder for the WNBA to hide behind the shield of "that's just the game." Because this isn't about basketball anymore. It's about whether the league is presiding over and enabling a hostile work environment for its biggest star. And then there's the NBA's reaction, or more precisely, its refusal to react. Kennedy Carter blindsides Clark. No ejection. Diamond D. Shields crashes into her like a linebacker. No suspension. Marina Mabrey shoves her with clear intent. No fine. Tina Charles makes dangerous back contact. Not even acknowledged. Inaction after inaction. Incident after incident. The league has left these moments to fade quietly from the headlines without consequence. But in legal terms, every non-response isn't just a missed call. It's evidence that the WNBA is failing in its duty to protect the very same breach that cost the league dearly in the Hamby case. This is where the story deepens from neglect into something more incendiary, the possibility of identity-based discrimination. Caitlin Clark isn't just a rookie phenom. She's a straight white woman in a league that is predominantly black and openly LGBTQ. It shouldn't matter. But in 2017, former player Candace Wiggins claimed she was bullied out of the league for being straight. At the time, those allegations were dismissed. Now, they read like an early warning. If Clark's targeting can be shown to have even a partial basis in identity, the legal implications don't just escalate, they explode. This isn't just workplace harassment anymore. It enters the realm of federal civil rights law. Because discrimination law doesn't just care about whether the league meant to discriminate, it cares about the outcome. It cares about the pattern. It cares about whether a player's workplace became unsafe due to factors tied to legally protected characteristics. Even if the WNBA denies any bias, the environment Clark is experiencing could still qualify as a civil rights violation. Intersection of gender, race, and sexuality makes the situation volatile and unprecedented. Hamby's case focused on one axis of discrimination: pregnancy. Clark's case could hit multiple, compounding, protected categories in the eyes of federal law. That intersectionality doesn't just make the case stronger, it makes it legally and politically explosive. The most dangerous lawsuit the W has ever faced may already be taking shape. The political world has begun circling. Indiana Representative Jim Banks has already sent a formal letter to WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert demanding answers. Sports media heavyweight Stephen A. Smith has speculated that a future presidential administration could seize on Clark's case as a political weapon. Much like Columbia University's $221 million civil rights settlement became a national talking point. Once politics enters the arena, the WNBA loses control of the narrative. It's no longer about flagrant fouls and referee whistles. It's about constitutional rights, federal oversight, and nationally televised hearings where league officials are grilled under oath. That's the kind of spotlight no sports league wants. But it doesn't take a Department of Justice probe to get there. A private lawsuit can open the door, and politicians can rush in behind it. Clark's case, complete with statistical evidence, a sympathetic public profile, and the potential for an identity-based discrimination claim, is perfectly positioned for that kind of escalation. Politicians aren't drawn to basketball games. They're drawn to stories like this. And when they come, they won't see it as a sport. They'll see it as a symbol.